it is true that the human civilization gave the ability to be master of fire, then our small country was prepared to this 1,000 years ago. Azerbaijan has always been called the land of fire. Who are these people residing there and calling themselves Azerbaijanians? How do they live nowadays, and what do they aspire in future in this noisy, many-voiced modern world? There is a version that initially people were settling on the earth, probably searching for energy-saturated areas. Energy clot of the Absheron Peninsula, beneficial climate, fertile Azerbaijani plain had been attracting people for a long time. In Azerbaijan there are 9 climatic zones amongst 11. On the north it is changed by snowy mountains, and just at 500 kilometers distance from them there is a subtropic Lenkoran. .5 million people reside at the territory of Azerbaijan, with an area of 86.6 thousand square kilometers. Traces of ancient times are quite sufficient in Azerbaijan. The small lake with rather cheerless landscape around is unique. Mir-Gasim Lake, where one can find even today the relics of ancient animals in oil, has only one analogue in the world, La Brea Rancho in the United States. The relics of Azerkinovideo, which lived 80,000 years ago, were found in Azer cave in Karabakh. These queer rocks, which seem to be a chaotic heap of stones, 10,000 years ago, our ancient ancestors in Neolithic epoch left the message about themselves. And whoever lived here, these were we. This was a part of our formation, part of what we are today. We are asked sometimes, how far does our history go to? How far do we remember ourselves as the nation? We are speaking today almost the same language which was spoken 1,000 years ago in great epos Dede Korkut, the handbook of every Azerbaijanian. We listen to music, and even not professional could tell in this music centuries of music culture. Azerbaijani culture, as material evidence of the history, witnessed the centuries of national self-conscious. The conquerors changed, the cultural milestones were replaced. However, the aesthetic integrity of Azerbaijani culture remained. It has been traced almost all along the whole recent millennium. This integrity of culture might be traced in all the monuments of Azerbaijan, actually. The creation of great architect Ajami Abu Bakr Mausoleum of Momine Hatun. It is gorgeous, though it's not an imperial greatness. The monument impresses with its simplicity and deliberate reservedness. By the way, in that very area in Nakhchivan, there is one of the remarkable holy places of Islam, Asabil Kaf Cave, depicted in sacred Quran. This integrity of culture we can find in the heart of İçeri Şehir, the old part of the capital, the palace of Şirvanşahs, the monument dated back the 14th century. In Maidan's Tower, the age of the latter dates back to remote pre-Islamic centuries, and this issue is still being argued till now. In the labyrinth of humpbacked streets, the planning of which is the same as it was 800 years ago. In ancient mosques, wells, in 11 bathrooms of Old Town, one is functioning even now. And finally, in the work of old masters of national craftwork, still preserved in various parts of the country. The history and modern times are intertwined in a queer way, either dramatically or ironically, in the scenery of today Azerbaijan. It is true that every empire, every state, every epoch imprinted its own traces there. And this neighborhood suddenly reveals the scale of changes which happened in the world and happened to the country. Only this nation, which felt as a whole, could have such a thoroughly developed self-defense system which circled the country from north to south. The fires on the towers immediately informed about the invasions. During the centuries, the people living there attempted several times to establish its own state. From time and again, they succeeded. However, this rich and abundant part of the world was overwhelmed by historic streams. Under powerful pressure of mighty powers, Azerbaijan lost and again gained independence, as if in assembling and disassembling mosaic once and again. Early 19th century, Azerbaijan was divided between two neighboring powers and experienced all the tragedy of separated nation. It was either subsiding or breaking up, with new surge in different historic epochs. The northern Azerbaijan was nearly 200 years within Russia.
Bakıdan gelmişim, Bakıdan. Gözlere gezdiğini burada.
In the result of active development of oil industry, by the end of the last century, Azerbaijan turned into the largest industrial appendage of Russia. In 1898, it produced about half of world oil production. During all the years of its existence in the composition of the USSR, Azerbaijan has never been provided with any grants from the center. It always gave more than it received. During the Second World War, 80% of all the petrol which made all the tanks and aviation move was produced in Baku. Oil industry in past and present mostly shaped the image of Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. When first demonstrations started in the period of perestroika and for the first time the forgotten banner of independent Azerbaijan almost timidly was fluttering above the square, many people recalled that Azerbaijan had already had a brief experience of independence in this century. In 1918, the founders of that first state, which survived no more than 2 years, stated once the banner lifted, it would never fall again. That banner was to be reserved only in the hearts for 70 years of the Soviet power. However, it was back. The feeling of independence came back to us with blood. In January 1990, blood stained the streets of Baku. 2 million city was invaded by the Soviet tanks for suppression. This only triggered the people's thirst to independence. The collapse of the USSR started here in Azerbaijan, due to the conflict broken up in Nagorno-Karabakh. The war in Karabakh has taken thousands and thousands of lives and proved to be that high price which Azerbaijan people had paid for the freedom of the country, for its independence gained. It's been 4 years since the declaration of ceasefire at Karabakh front. However, the war has not been over. And how can it be over if 20% of our territory has been occupied and 100,000 of refugees found shelter in tent camps? How can it be over for the invalids who lost their friends, for parents whose kids died, for children which became orphans? However, the country was torn apart not only with war, it was shaken by in-house conflicts. Short and long armistices at the front line were followed as a shadow by the waves of rebels, terrorist acts plotted outside Azerbaijan.
Mağrur ve kudretli Azerbaycan halkına eşk olsun.
It was an alarming for the Republic hour when Gaydar Aliyev, a professional politician with huge experience, who had a clear understanding of all the complexity of domestic and foreign conditions of Azerbaijan, became the president of the country. The politician who has a rare gift of communicating with people, finds their support and at the same time is aware of all the craftiness and unscrupulousness of political games, the manners of the enemies of the country. After the presidential elections of 1993, President took an oath to his people to provide order and peace in the country. Patiently, measuring every step, he paced toward fulfillment of his promise. The life in the country eventually was changing to better. new elections were held to the parliament. The new constitution was adopted. In the meantime, the country kept working on developing the new symbols of the independent state. The national currency is gradually strengthening. The regulatory system is in progress. Border guards of Azerbaijan is being established. The state border is being clarified. In spite of the pressure of some neighboring countries, Azerbaijan hasn't got a single military base on its territory. It guards its own borders on its own, and it stands up to its positions with regards to the Caspian status. Azerbaijan is strengthening its foreign political relationships with many countries of the world, in particular with the neighbors. It is a member of United Nations Organization and Organization of Islamic States. We immediately entered a new economic reality for the second time in this century, and both times the natural resources of the country, notably oil, became one of the major impetus. For the first time, Azerbaijan signed the contract with Western oil companies, which was immediately named the Contract of the Century. Yet let's look at the main question. What might tiny Azerbaijan offer to the world on the eve of coming millennium? Yes, we are open to the world, as our fathers told us, the founders of First Azerbaijan Democratic State. We are loyal to the triad, Turkism, Islamism, modernism. Not in words but in our deeds. We are Turks confessing Islam and adopting many standards of the modern world. We keep on constructing mosques and Islam schools, and we are tolerant to all religious confessions. For the recent years, Azerbaijan turned to be a political society. Dozens of newspapers are issued here, dozens of political parties established. Pluralism of opinions remains one of the achievements of young state. And who knows when our country manages to get out of the whirlpool of war and today's calamities. Perhaps it is Azerbaijan which is destined to prove the possibility of mingling various values of the modern world, which often even exclude each other. The key to this is the culture of the country, combining an ancient Mugham art with modern music search, long-living traditions of folk art in the modern painting, architecture, cinema and theatre arts. The key to this is a high education level of the country accumulated during the times of Soviet Empire. University degree after the critical period again is considered as a necessary level. Dozens of private universities have been opened in the Republic, new institutes, colleges, including Islam Institute. The key to this, the national science, which was reserved despite anything. Such unique institution, even within ex-Soviet Union, as Azerbaijan National Aerocosmic Agency, dealing with aerocosmic research of the environment, processing of aerocosmic information, machinery for space navigation, or astronomic observatory in Pirkuli of world significance, which studies the stellar life, or numerous scientific research institutes related to oil. Above all this, there is inexhaustible economic potential of the country, its human resources, the industrious Azerbaijanians. The fifth consortium was established on oil development and production on Caspian fields. Privatization is going on in the agricultural sector of the country. The peasants learn to be the landowner without getting over the force of inertia. The investors arrive to the country even being aware of its problems. The leadership of the country does its best to increase the international profile of the country, to make it attractive for everyone who would wish to take part in the revival of Azerbaijan. And of course we've got an army. Strong, future-orientated country cannot be without army. For the short time, Azerbaijan managed to increase fighting efficiency of the army to the level of modern armed forces. Not to attack somebody, but to be able all the time, any hour, to stand up for the territorial integrity of the country. As a token of peaceful Azerbaijan is a commonly known fact that Azerbaijan had never claimed for any territory to any neighboring country, though it had all the grounds many times to act like that. To date, Azerbaijan prefers strength and ability to challenge the destiny, rather than to be gloom and pessimistic. We have already proved our right to that. We are still expected to prove that Azerbaijan state has its own distinct voice in the world with 100 of countries. We are prepared to the future. We are open to the friends and uncompromising to any attempt to build up the destiny of the nation on the account of other nations. The country is full of energy, today to progress, to the future.